Okay, Tom, what's tip number 2, please?
Tip number 2. Okay, tip number 2 is teach students what to do when they're stuck. Teach students what to do when they're stuck. Now, this is part of my more broader emphasis, that we need to teach kids the behaviour that they need to use in order to be successful in school. Right? There's no point assuming that kids know what to do. There's no point assuming that kids are as resourceful as you'd like them to be. You know, many of them aren't, and many of us aren't. So rather than sitting there kind of tutting and thinking, oh, they're stuck, teach them what to do when they're stuck, and you'll give them a much greater chance of doing the right thing. Let me give you an example. Very frequently you walk into a lesson and you'll be teaching away, and you know, even in the most brilliant of lessons, even in a Craig Barton lesson, for example, there might be a few kids that you haven't got around to in 30 or 40 minutes, or even if you're a primary teacher in a morning or an afternoon. And then you look at them after about 45 minutes, you realise that they've done bugger all. There's nothing in their books whatsoever. Or worse, their hands are covered in ink. You know, and it's always the same kids whose hands are covered in ink for some reason. They must all buy pens from the same ropey shop. Now, you look to the kid and you say, why haven't you done anything, little Craig? And little Craig looks at you with an angelic look and says, I'm stuck. Now, it may well be that the child was stuck, didn't know what to do, and I was embarrassed to ask. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable if obviously suboptimal circumstance. Or it might be that they just think, oh, stuff, I don't want to do this, and you know, I'm just going to sit it out as long as I can until somebody notices it and then really makes me do it. And even then, I'll just say, oh, I don't understand, and knowing full well that by that point it'll be too late for them to catch up and so on and so forth. And maybe they'll get to go and play with the Duplo or something in the year 10 class. So I don't know how you teach Craig. Maybe you use Duplo. So the point is this: say to them, right, see when you're stuck, here's what to do, and make this a really explicit part of your kind of welcome to the class. Not because you want to be a hard ass, but because you want them to be successful. So if you're stuck, here's how to get unstuck. So for instance, you might say to them something like, look at your book. Maybe the answer's there. Or look at the board and ask yourself, have I read everything in the board properly? Turn to your shoulder partner and say, right, what's going on here? I'm a wee bit stuck here. Can you help me? Maybe they can assist you. Maybe there's a book they can go and get. Maybe there's something on the wall, a poster they're supposed to look at, whatever. There should be a process within the school room for them to do. And then finally, there should be an expectation to ask for help. And if they don't do that, then there should be some kind of this pastoral discussion, or even perhaps even a consequential punitive discussion based on whether or not they just didn't bother their backsides. So really emphasise, here's what you should do, rather than just sit there and be stuck. I mean, I used to run Duke of Edinburgh courses, which, for those of you listening from Kathmandu, is a kind of outward bound, orienteering, hunter-gatherer type training session for schools. You would teach children what to do if they got lost. You would teach students what to do if their compass broke or their phone power, disastrously ran out, or indeed they couldn't get reception. You would teach them how to read landmarks and milestones and how to navigate. You would teach them how to be powerful. You would teach them how to be independent. And that's my second top tip.
I like it. Just one quick follow-up question, Tom, and it might be a really bad one, this. But in terms of teaching them what to do when they're stuck, this is a really bad question, but what's the best way to teach them? Is it like you would teach them anything else? Is it, okay, when you are stuck, do this, and then when you see good examples of that, like stop because, oh, look, Lucy's stuck on this, but she's done this, so is it that kind of stuff? How do you kind of get them to the point where it becomes automatic that they know what to do when they're stuck?
I mean, I guess the way I would describe this is you have to describe it to them, and then you have to get them to practice it. So essentially, it's a pedagogical process. Yeah, it's like coaching. It's basically teaching. And I often say this, that teaching behaviour is teaching, and that it's not something. I mean, you couldn't tell somebody how to drive a car. Yeah, you couldn't say, here's how you drive a car, and then someone would go, now I know how to drive a car. You have to teach them, which involves, wait for it, and I hope you're sitting down for this, that you take a small basic, a foundational fact or skill, and you demonstrate it, and then you get them to demonstrate it back to you. You observe what they've done, and then you give them high-quality feedback on what they've just done, and maybe you reteach it, or you practice it, or you do something different, or you move on to something else. And then you build up all those micro skills until you achieve, through what is essentially a very basic mastery model. You achieve some kind of greater competence. And the thing is, that's how you teach behaviour as well. You demonstrate the behaviours, you talk about the behaviours, you make it explicit, you get them to do it, you give them feedback on it, and then you rinse and repeat until the sun burns cold.
I think that's the single biggest mistake I've made with behaviour over the years, and it's only from speaking to people like yourself and more recently Adam Boxer to realise that you've got to teach behaviour in the same way you teach anything else.
Yeah.
And like one of the single biggest changes I've made is after I've demonstrated the behaviour, include it in retrieval opportunities. So to take your tip here about what you do when you're stuck, that'll be from one of my starters a couple of weeks later. You know, question 1, add these fractions. Question 2, write down what do we do in this class when we're stuck on things. Because if I want kids to remember how to add fractions as much as I want them to remember what they do when they're stuck, I've got to provide retrieval opportunities for both of them. But I would never have thought to do that with behaviour. It was just explain what to do first day in September, and then just hope some miracle happens and they remember it. But it doesn't work, does it, like that?
This is essentially the curse of knowledge. You know, the curse of expertise, which I go back to time and time again when it comes to educators, that if you don't know how to do something, don't assume that. If you know how to do something really well, don't assume that someone else is as expert as you at it. And the problem is when you read, inspirational quotes from Richard Feynman or Albert Einstein or something like that. You very frequently get really expert level tips about how to teach stuff, and it's no good for novices. And you might hear Richard Feynman saying something like, teach them the joy of numbers. And you go, that's brilliant, but they can't do number bonds, so there's not much bloody joy going on there. So teach them the basics, and then we can get to that wonderful expert level of ascendancy that you've achieved.
Perfect.